Hey everybody, welcome to the SpeedCreep YouTube channel. This is my 1972 Chevelle that I'm building over the, well, it was the winter time, now it's the springtime, getting ready to be summer. Done a bunch of work to this. If you want to see more stuff, check out the playlist at the end of this video. I've got a bunch of videos on doing all kinds of work, getting this thing out of the weeds. I've owned it for 20 years, trying to get it back on the road, make a cool family rig. But today, we are working on engine accessories, and I say today lightly because I've been working on these engine accessories off and on for it feels like 2 weeks, because this is the kind of stuff that takes a lot of time and you can't jump all at it at once. You got to keep going back and forth, or at least I have been. So I'd like to show you what I got. 1989 Corvette powertrain with a 6-speed, and I've deleted a lot of the factory pulleys and stuff on this, trying to keep the serpentine system and then adapt stuff like the power steering to the 1972 Chevelle steering box. So trying to mesh these two worlds together on my poor man LS build, if you will. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching. This is a little short video. Okay, what we got here, like I said, is a 5.7 liter 350 from a 1989 Corvette. It's paired to a 6-speed transmission that I'm putting in the chassis of a 1972 Chevelle. So I've kind of got the fuel lines almost finished here. I wanted to switch over on the accessory drive. The accessory drive, although it seems pretty simple, has actually taken a little bit of time to get correct. And if any of you guys are messing with Corvette stuff, this will apply if you're trying to delete pulleys as well. So I'm doing a little bit of Corvette pulley deletes mixed in with how to make it work with the Chevelle. So whichever side of this video you're watching, hopefully it helps you out a little bit. And this is not perfect, but it's what I've done. Hopefully it will work. Seems like it will. So first thing I had to do was delete pulleys. So right here is the smog pump on the Corvette, and then I believe there's a tensioner and then the AC pump. So I wasn't going to use any of that stuff, so I deleted it. But in order to do that, the belt system used to go around this water pump, and I believe it ran in reverse rotation. So since I'm only running this short setup, which will be over top, around, and back to the crank, it will reverse the water pump rotation. But a 1982 Corvette water pump is the same design in every way, with the exception of the impeller. The impeller is made to turn clockwise. So all I had to do was exchange my 1989 water pump to a 1982 Corvette water pump. Everything bolted on perfectly, all the shivs and pulleys and everything line up right. It looks to be the exact same with the exception of the rotation difference. So that's perfect for the pulley setup. But this smog pump, so that's good for the water pump. The smog pump brackets held the alternator on. So now I got to figure out how to mount the alternator. Good thing is I'm trying to keep the power steering pump, so the bottom bracket's going to stay. I'll get to this in a second. So this is kind of just mocked up. I read this on a few forums. Some guys had a good idea, so I'm just taking my little whack at this thing. What I ended up doing was ordering 2 3/8 Heim joints from Speedway, along with an aluminum adjustment rod or bar. So left-hand thread, right-hand thread. So when you rotate it, if you look closely, it will push the belt out or the alternator out. And if you rotate it the other way, it will pull the alternator back. So it's a serpentine belt, so I don't need a ton of adjustment like a V-belt would have, but I do or would like to have a little bit of adjustment because I'm probably going to have to figure out what kind of custom belt this is going to be off of what random car. So once I get to that, I'll have a little bit of adjustment with this. This rod ended up being very nice from Speedway. I'll put the information hopefully in this video of the length of the rod, and then I ordered the Heim joints separate. Going into the intake manifold here, just below the thermostat, is a 3/8 bolt. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Now up here is where I saw a few different options. Some people just take this rod and mount it straight to this ear on the alternator. Now, if you do that, it will work because those heim joints will allow you to angle this thing up here. And I did it, and it does hold, but I did read that after a few years, a few people had issues with the alternator housing actually breaking. And that's probably because there's a bolt back here that used to have a hard mount that went down to the header bolt to support the back of the alternator. Now, I tried doing that back, but because I'm putting the headers on, you can no longer get the stud to go through there to use that bracket. So my idea here was, well, why can't I connect these two? And that should stiffen it up at least a lot more than it would be if I only used one mount. So I kind of mocked this up with some nuts and washers to see if this idea would work. I just made a little plate to go from the original mounting bracket up and line up with this ear, and then use some all thread, 3/8 all thread. I did have to drill this one ear out, just one size up, because it had a smaller bolt in it. So I drilled that out so that the all thread could go all the way through. This allows me to center this piece, which I think is more aesthetically pleasing, and it grabs both mounts. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but the entire car is moving with very light pressure. So if that means anything, it's at least stronger than it was before. So now I need to make this look a little bit better. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is probably go, for the time being, I'll keep the all thread idea, but I will ditch these nuts in the center and replace it with spacer. So I've got some 1/2-inch tubing that happens to slide just over top of this 3/8 rod, and then I can pinch in between the heim joint and the mounting tabs, and then tighten this all as one unit, and it should give me the same centered tightening, but it should look a lot better than just a piece of all rod through there, all thread through there. And then of course I'll paint that and stuff later, but I want to try that. That's what I'm going to work on today. I've got went and picked up some stuff from Napa. I got me some tubing, so hopefully this will work for that. I went ahead and got them to cut it long so I can cut it down to size, but that's the idea. I'm going to cut this tubing down so it fits in there perfectly between the washers, and then I can cinch this whole system up. The next thing on the list after I finish this, or actually before I finish this, I went ahead and did the power steering pump. So if you're interested, the power steering pump on this Corvette engine used to go to a rack and pinion. And I'll post some pictures as I talk along here so you can get a better look, but it has a very tight fitting mount here just behind the pulley. So I was originally going to use AN adapters and then just run stainless steel braided line over, hose over to this, but I couldn't because the turn was too tight behind this pulley. It ran into the pulley. So then I was like, all right, well, how can I utilize the stock hose? So this is actually a stock hose out of the Corvette. This was the original one that I cut off the car, so this gives you a better idea. This goes into the power steering pump for the high pressure side, so I'm utilizing that fitting, but I bought an entirely new hose. Only problem was on the end of the hose, this is metric, and the stock Chevelle steering box is 11/16, so I couldn't use the fitting that was on this side. So what I ended up doing is taking this up to Napa, and you can probably do this at anybody you know locally that will do your hydraulic hoses. I cut the factory hose as tight as I could to the original crimp, so I kept as much hose as possible. And then I had them crimp on this 90-degree bend -6 fitting. And I already had the fitting just below that as an Earl's fitting that goes from 11/16, which is the Chevelle steering box, and adapts it to -6. So that allowed me to go factory hose, power steering pump, over to a -6 90, and then -6 adapted into 11/16. That, hopefully you can see the routing. I'll put some pictures on if this doesn't look very well in the video, but it's nice and tidy. It's very tightly put in there, but it definitely is not under a bunch of pressure. If that makes any sense. When I loosen this fitting up, you can still kind of turn this a little bit. It's not kinked. It's like the perfect amount of hose that I needed. And then when you look at the front of the car, you don't even see it. And then if you think about the radiator support's going to be right here, so you'd be looking down from this angle, it all tucks in there quite nicely. So I think that's going to work. Of course, I won't know until I fire the car up and get some power steering fluid in here and make sure this isn't going to leak. But if it doesn't leak, I'll just go ahead and go back up to Napa and get them to make me a second hose, and I'll just keep that in the trunk of the car so that if we're ever on a road trip and I have an issue with this one custom piece that I'm making here, I'll have a spare, because the hose itself, I think it was only like 15 bucks. And then the fitting, the Dash 690 was like $34. So I'll just go ahead and get them to make up a spare. It's small enough. I'll tuck it in the trunk in a little spare parts box, and I'll have it in case something happens going on down the road. So for the return side of this steering box, I have I can't remember, I think it's 5/8. I'll put it up on the screen in case it's, y'all can look this up on Google what size is, but this Chevelle side is slightly smaller on the return. So whatever that is, adapted to Dash 6. And then I got a Dash 6 to barb fitting, because this one's not high pressure. So now I'm going to utilize the rest of the Corvette stuff. So this return will actually go up to a reservoir that was originally in the Corvette, which I haven't quite gotten out of the Corvette yet. But it'll go into a little reservoir tank at the top, and then the reservoir tank is where I will keep the fluid. And then at the bottom, it will come out for the return, and the return is back here on the bottom of the pump. So it sounds kind of like a mess, but it should be nice and tidy once it's in the car. So that's how I adapted the '89 Corvette stuff to fit in a 1972 Chevelle and utilize the serpentine belt, delete a bunch of the extra pulleys that I don't want, and really all I got to do to finish this off as far as the accessory drive goes, of course I've got some plumbing to do, but to finish the accessory drive, we have to make these spacers. So let's make those real quick so I can show you the final product. That was actually pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So if you're looking to do it, I think that's a pretty clean way you can do it. Some may think so, some may not. But 3/8 bolts, just 3/8 bolt just under the thermostat housing, goes right into the intake. Like I said, I'll put the information for these parts in here, but this aluminum sleeve up to another heim joint, and then this is the bracket that I have set up. Ended up making these 1.5 inches a piece, or just under 1.5 inches. If you want the exact numbers that I used, ended up being 1.45 inches. So 50 thousandths less than 1.5 inches for each individual. And then a little bracket. It's not painted yet, but it goes from this one extra amount up here. So I'm gonna paint that, I don't know, silver or black, probably black to make it disappear, but you can still access the connector. You can still get underneath to pop the connector out. So that's what I did for that. Power steering pump's in, alternator's in, water pump is on. Now I need to measure for a belt, but that is the engine accessories. And this might not seem like a lot, but this is just kind of nickel and dimed me and taking a ton of time to get it correct. And I think and hope that this is correct. We will see, but I'm happy with how it's turned out so far. Hopefully you got a little bit of information from this that could help you out in some kind of way. even if it's just what not to do. But this is a little bit shorter than my typical videos because I'm actually on work training for a week, and then I almost immediately go into family vacation. So I was trying to get a little bit of content for you guys so I can still post every Sunday at 5 o'clock. So that's why a slight change in content. So I'll be back to the longer form stuff when I get back from my work trip and my vacation. So bear with me, but I figured this was worth looking at. So this will all still be a part of the much bigger video with the wrap up stuff. So you'll see the time lapse of that. You'll probably see me just kind of roll through this. That's because I made this video. Yeah, like right now, a little sneak peek. I got the clutch master cylinder mocked up, working on the rest of the clutch assembly. I've got the stainless steel lines that's going from that clutch master back down to the slave. Got the new slave cylinder here. I got the coil I'm messing with. Booster. I mean, just a lot of stuff going on. So I'm at that stage in this build where things are just kind of jumping around. When I run into a roadblock on one item, I kind of just switch over to the next item so that I can still keep moving and somewhat keep my sanity. Like this is where the clutch is coming through, but the tab is way up high. So I'm probably gonna have to cut this bracket off and bring it down. So little stuff like that just takes a long time. In the grand scheme of things, you end up spending just as much time on this small, what appear to be small project as you would almost making the entire transmission tunnel. So that's what I got for you. Check back in and I will let you know how vacation went when I get back. But that's what I got for now. I appreciate you watching. If you're subscribed, I appreciate it. If you're not subscribed, please consider it. It's for free. And hopefully you can join us back every Sunday at 5 o'clock until this car gets moving. So thanks. Have a great one.